Hello, my name is Roland Waits. I wear this mask because it doesn't matter what my face looks like. I'm not really, it just allows me the freedom to say what I want to say without getting shot in the street. And this channel does not exist for hits or money. It's just to get some information out. The person I'm about to tell you about, you already know a lot about him. And the reason you know a lot about him is because the Nazis absolutely hated this guy. They absolutely despised this guy. They despised this guy so much that they actually, after the war, people who were close to Hitler and close to Goebbels and close to Himmler, who were writing histories about this guy, perverted him in such a way that they could hide the fact that this guy was one of the greatest German patriots of all time. And yes, he was a member of the Nazi Party, but he was not a willing member of the Nazi Party. He was actually more interested in a strong Germany than he was ever trying to kill half of the world. And you have to understand that everything that's been written about him since then has been written by Nazis who hated his guts. Now, where did I get my information? My information came from this book right here. This book is Hitler's Generals by W.E. Hart. It was published in 1944. This book was published in 1944 while the war was going on. The fact that it was published in 1944 means that it was the information in it was derived through 1943 until it was published in 1944. This book is amazingly detailed, and you will never see the history of what happened to Colonel General Baron Werner von Fritsch anywhere else than in this book. And the reason is because this book is a work of wartime propaganda designed to completely destabilize the German hierarchy. And I'll explain that later. This was a brilliant book, and the way it's written, the way the information is in it, it almost seems like it had to be done by the British Secret Service and the people who were spying for them in Germany. And they have an entry in here about one person who was who actually was in the German military corps. The title is Hitler's Generals by W.E. Hart. W.E. Hart is not his name, it's a pseudonym. The person is supposedly was in the German military, and he didn't like what he saw with the Nazis. He started working with opposition groups inside Germany, and he had to leave because he knew he was going to die. So he went to the British, he volunteered to fight for the British, and he was invalided out, which seems to mean that he was injured in the service of freedom. And so read into that what you will, but the information in here does not seem like it came from only one person, because it is amazingly complete and very different from what you hear or see on any websites or in any books anywhere else. And the fact that it was published in 1944, it's not all roses and honey for the Nazis. It's actually very damning. And for it to be effective, it has to be accurate. They have to know that the person that wrote this knows about them. I think this was the British intelligence service telling the Nazis, we know about you. We know about what you did. We know about how messed up your command structure is, and we're coming for you. And that's why they published it. To show that the Nazi Party was like a cancer on Germany. And that the German military, if it so felt so, could solve that problem, because they were told the truth. And everybody in the German military that was not a SS member kind of knew about the stuff about Fritsch. They knew about it. So let's get on to Mr. Colonel General Baron Werner von Fritsch's history. Now, I told you, I said, you know this guy. Now, how can I know this guy? I've never heard about this guy in my life. Well, after World War II, and this made me laugh because I saw this today, one of the biggest volumes of this guy's life was written by a former staff member of Adolf Hitler, a guy who absolutely hated this guy. I mean, it's amazing that that the people that absolutely hated this guy got to write his life story. So um, you will see lots of very ugly letters that are attributed to Fritsch, and volumes of information that are attributed to Fritsch. But I would assert to you that that is actually Fritsch realizing that everything he writes will be seen by the Nazis. That he's actually buying time to maneuver himself in a position where he could actually save Germany from the Nazi Party. And we're going to get to that. But I keep telling you, you've seen this guy before. Well, guess what? You've seen him on the old TV show Hogan's Heroes. Colonel Klink with the monocle. That's Fritsch. You've seen him in the classic, I think it's How I Learned to Love the Bomb. Peter Sellers' portrayal of the Nazi advisor that can't get his legs to work right because he's got braces on him. That's Fritsch. And you've seen him in Bugs Bunny cartoons from that time where the German has a monocle on. That's Fritsch. And all of that came from Nazis trying to completely dump on this guy. Now, the one from 1944 obviously might be just because they were trying to make fun of the Nazis because they were fighting a battle against these people. And they wanted them to lose. But the later ones are all about making this guy an object of ridicule. And when I tell you about this guy's life, you will have a respect for a person that's trapped in a political situation he cannot change. And you'll have amazing respect for the fact that he refused to be a Nazi gangster. So let's get to it. He was born on August 4th, 1880 in Benrath, Germany. He was born to Lieutenant General Baron George von Fritsch. His mother was Adelaide von Badel Swims, I think. Anyway, mother and father were part of the Evangelical Church, and they ran a home for physically challenged and epileptic children. Well, the reason they did that was because the good Baron's son had contracted polio. Now, I've never seen that anywhere in any book, but I can tell you why I think so. Because in one of the accounts of how Fritsch died, they mention leg braces. And leg braces was a common component, and polio was a very terrifying disease back then. And Werner von Fritsch contracted polio. He was treated in private there. He was fitted with leg braces, and he was trained to hide his disability. The Baron wanted him to succeed in life. That was his son. That was his blood. And what you have to understand about Germans is family, especially blood, is very important. And they want to sire children and push their line ahead. And it really doesn't have a lot to do with, it has to do with their family line. Okay? So anyway, he was an astonishing student. He was bought into the German military school and military service. If you're rich, you can buy your status going into the military. You don't have to be a private. Back then, you could buy your way into officer school. And no doubt, Werner von Fritsch had been trained by his father very well in a military theory, and he did well as an officer. He did outstanding as an officer. He was very bright, and he had a very abrasive, very arrogant attitude. And I believe that he got that because he felt that if he was very abrasive and very nasty, people would concentrate on that and they would never look at his disability. 1922, he ran into a guy named General Hans von Seeckt, S-E-E-C-K-T. This guy was a military genius, and he taught Werner von Fritsch very well. 1927, he fights politicians about rearmament because the politicians were trying to follow the Treaty of Versailles, and the German military was having none of it. They were trying to hide the fact that they were rearming Germany. And he found a way to fight with these politicians to where they would shut their mouth, and he shut their mouth. 1928, he completed plans for the Polish invasion, which featured the element of speed. That was in 1928, 10 years before it happened. In 1934, there's a guy named Röhm that heads the SA and the SS, which are both kind of the same thing. They're paramilitary forces. The Intel Service of the Reichswehr drafts letters that kills Röhm. Röhm was apparently going to supposedly kill Hitler and install von Fritsch or another general as a figurehead. I think it was von Blomberg, actually. This 1934 event actually explains why years later, like 4 years later, von Fritsch and Blomberg are tied together in a complete lie by the Nazis that is being told about them today. In any case, von Fritsch supposedly saves Hitler's life. In that Röhm paperwork, he was going to demand for the immediate arrest of Himmler, Heydrich, Goebbels, and a guy named Dahr. Dahr is an agricultural minister that the landowners feared because the Nazis were going to take their land rights away from them. You have to understand, in Germany, think of three circles. You've got three circles. Here's one circle, it's the landowners. In the middle circle is the German military establishment. The circles cross here. And over here is the Nazi Party. The circles cross there. But in between there is the German military establishment. And they were trying to protect the landowners because that has been the heritage for 1,000 years in Germany. That's what the military was about, protecting the landowners' property and the people who lived on it. Anyway, in 1934, anti-Hitler organizations constantly use Fritz as their German savior, and it doesn't escape Hitler's gaze. Now, was that actually what was going on, or was Himmler and Goebbels trying to get rid of Fritz? Because as soon as 1934, as soon as he became the chief of the Reichswehr, he kept bumping heads against Himmler and Goebbels. And I mean, and Göring. He kept hitting heads with them because they were useless. In his mind, they were useless. 1935, Himmler and Heydrich manufacture evidence and give it to Hitler. This is where you get this, the testimony of a supposed German prostitute that says that he is willing to testify he had sex with Fritz, which is a complete-ass lie, and Himmler's the one who put this, probably tortured the guy into doing it. And they gave the evidence to Hitler, and Hitler said, look, I need Fritz for the upcoming war. I need his cool demeanor. I want you to burn the evidence and kill all the witnesses. That's in this book. I mean, you can't make that up. Hitler said, burn all the paperwork, kill all the witnesses. And of course, Himmler didn't do that, which surprises me, because he's Mein Führer. You're supposed to do what he says. Anyway, Himmler puts the people in a concentration camp, and the paperwork is saved for later. 1935, Fritz. In 1935, Hitler wanted to do an exploratory into France using German troops to see how weak the French defenses were. And Fritz said, don't do that, please. I can find out what we have to find out myself without doing that. And he did. He initiated an intelligence campaign that involved getting to the French hierarchy and paying off certain German military commanders with money to come over to their side. So Fritz was kind of the fall of France in his brilliance. All right, von Fritsch never said Heil Hitler. He always said Heil mein Führer, which is the same thing. Heil Hitler says that Hitler is your savior. Heil mein Führer is like saying you're the boss. You're the boss. And that immensely pissed off Hitler, Goering, and Goebbels. 1935, successful occupation of the Rhineland and the Saarbrücken. This is one of the most beautiful passages in this book. I wish I could just read it to you for rote, but after the occupation of the Rhineland and the Saarbrücken, Hitler is celebrating at a party with his slime-ass guys, Himmler and Goebbels and Goering. They're celebrating, they're laughing, he's doing his little foot stomp dance. And von Fritsch drives up in a car, in a staff car. And when I thought about it, I said, you know, thinking about his disability, I can see why this would look the way they stated it looked. You have to understand that a person with polio can have balance problems. That's what the leg braces are about. And they have a certain gait, which actually is identifiable with military gaits. It's that straight ahead gait. And when they make turns, it's better for a person with a balance problem to make a quick turn, stop. Not to try to make the turns regular people make. Well, anyway, von Fritsch pulls up to this party in the staff car. He gets out of the car. He stands out of the car erect. He walks up to Hitler. Hitler's laughing and they're all giggling and stuff, and he pops up the Heil Mein Führer. He looks Hitler right in the eye and he gives him a report about the military operations because he is the chief of the Reichswehr. I don't know if you escape what this means. He is literally the top military commander in Germany in 1934. So this is in 1935. He walks up to Hitler. He gives him Heil Mein Führer. He gives him a report. Hitler puts his hand out to shake his hand because he's happy. He spins around and he walks right back to the car and he drives off. And Hitler's standing there with his hand out. Oh my God. It's hilarious. It's like going, "Bull fun goo, you son of a bitch." Anyway, when I read that in that book, I said, man, I got to find out more about this guy. So anyway, that was in March 1st of 1935. In November of 1936, the French newspaper L'Heure publishes an article which has a direct bearing on this book, actually, that was published in 1944. They published an article that described in detail the entire workings of the German military establishment and the civilian, the Nazi establishment, and how the German military was not going along with the Nazis. They were saying, look, you're trying to go too fast here. We're trying to get the military organized and strengthened, and you guys are just being idiots. And it all came out on that newspaper article, and Hitler was insane. He said it was treason. He said it was treason. He said, how in the world did they find this out? Well, they found it out through the same information network that found the information in this book and published it in 1944. Anyway, that caused a major problem for von Fritsch. Anyway, November 1938, General Blomberg has a wonderful relationship with a woman and marries the woman, and Hitler congratulates him. And you have to understand something about this German military establishment. They are very sensitive to people marrying people not of their status. You would never see not Nazi, but a German military officer marry a woman from a family that didn't already have a German military history and wasn't of high standing.